Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. Thanks for joining us. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees will return to their jobs Monday after a deal was finally reached to reopen the government. Congress passed a short-term spending bill Friday. The president approved it, but the White House did not release any photos of him signing it. The measure halted the longest shutdown in American history, which left people without work for nearly 35 days. The bill will keep the government open until February 15th. However, funding for the president's border wall was left completely off the table. Democrats are calling the deal a victory, but the president insists the fight is far from over. In a tweet Saturday, he stood firm, saying border funding would be necessary for the next round of talks. He added, negotiations with Democrats will start immediately, and we will build the wall. The government shutdown was a big topic on the Sunday morning shows, along with Trump associate Roger Stone. He is maintaining his innocence after being indicted by the special counsel on Friday. Our check on the Sunday shows starts with his response to whether he will cooperate in the investigation.
If there's wrongdoing by other people in the campaign that I know about, which I know of none, but if there is, I would certainly testify honestly. I've been under investigation for 2 years. I've destroyed nothing, but if I were going to destroy evidence, wouldn't I have done it a long time ago? I think the way I was treated on Thursday is extraordinary. I think the American people need to hear about it.
This is us supporting the people of Venezuela who want their constitution and democracy followed. That's a fact. And anyone who, if people choose to ignore it because they don't like Donald Trump, that's silly.
Is the president really prepared to shut down the government again in 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think he actually is. Keep in mind, he's willing to do whatever it takes to secure the border. He does take this very seriously. This is a serious humanitarian and security crisis.
I believe fundamentally that if we were to build that wall, that it would change the notion of America.
You want to know how you'll never have a shutdown again? Let's not pay the members of Congress and Senate.
That's the Mark Warner bill.
That's the
and
bill.
the White House.
That's
right?
the bill I would
all
put in.
All political
yes.
staff.
That's the amendment I would offer.
Shawna Thomas joins me now. She's the Washington bureau chief for Vice News. Shawna, thanks so much for joining us. Do we know what ultimately served as the catalyst for the president to sign the short-term spending bill?
You know, it's a little unclear, but I think it was a combination of things. I think those two votes on the Senate floor, one for a continuing resolution, kind of like what we ended up seeing them pass, and then one for the president's partial immigration plan, when they both failed and you saw Republicans join the Democrats on their bill, I think that was in some ways Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer's message to the president of the United States. One, it takes 60 votes to get something through Congress. We don't have it. You don't have it. Therefore, we have to do something. And I think that was one thing. I think the other things we saw on Friday with the FAA workers and the air traffic controllers, there was enough of a sick out that it caused slowdowns on the East Coast when it comes to LaGuardia Airport. That was a big deal. We had started to see some of those TSA checkpoint lines be closed. So that's something that not only affects normal people other than just government workers, it affects business people, the types of people Donald Trump knows well in New York City. So it may have been that. And I mean, I would like to believe that people having to go to food banks to eat who are owed money by the federal government for their jobs, I would like to think that had something to do with it, too. But, you know, I was in a meeting and Nancy Pelosi said something that I thought was interesting, that like, for this shutdown to end, it was going to take, in some ways, the public to do something about it. And we saw the public do something about it. And we saw it start to affect larger parts of the public.
Yeah, I mean, it was really sobering to see, going back to those food banks, though, those images of federal workers in line to get food to feed themselves and their families. The president said that he is willing to shut down the government again if a deal on the border wall is not reached. So can we expect the contours of this debate to essentially be the same the next time around?
No, I don't think they can be totally the same. I think maybe for the president they are similar, but I do think there's an acknowledgement that he has to like get something to give something or give something to get something. I also think the contours of the debate are firmly inside Congress right now. The conferees to the committee to sort of try to work through this immigration deal / funding Homeland Security have been named. They will get into a room and in theory work together to come up with some kind of compromise. And I think going back to those two votes in the Senate that did not work this past week, the conferees are trying to come up with something that does work, and I do think there will be pressure on the president to sign it. That being said, the one thing that was sort of at the heart of all of this for the president of the United States was this campaign promise he made about building a wall, some kind of wall, steel slats, I don't know, but a wall. And that campaign promise to Democrats became something of a morality issue. And to them, the steel slats are somewhat immoral. I'm still struggling personally with how do you get past this idea that the wall is a moral issue on one side, a physical issue on the other. In between there is immigration and border security that I think everybody can actually agree on. We've already agreed that Customs and Border Patrol should hire more people. They've already agreed that there should be more money for ICE agents. All of that kind of stuff is doable. But this morality issue with a wall, I'm still not sure how you get past that.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the president. What kind of political blowback has the administration and the president received over this reopening, and how might that specifically influence President Trump's stance on a longer-term deal?
Well, I mean, we saw, and part of the reason why we were in this situation for over 30 days is that some conservative people out there who have a really big bullhorn, like the Ann Coulters of the world, basically called the president out for not standing by his campaign promise. She is still calling him out. I think one of her tweets this past week was he is now the wimpiest president, and I guess she referred to H.W. Bush as the one who was wimpier before President Trump caved on the wall. It will be interesting to see as those conversations continue, as we hear from conservative talk radio, as we see what Fox News says, how that influences the president of the United States. But I think we just have to, in some ways, count on the fact that Congress, and we saw this week, despite the fact that it took over 30 days for them to get it together, they don't want to go through this pain on either side. And while historically government shutdowns have not actually affected presidential elections, if people miss paycheck after paycheck after paycheck after paycheck, we may see that people remember this when they actually go to the ballot box in 2020. No Republicans, Mitch McConnell, the majority leader of the Senate, is up for re-election in 2020. He may have constituents who are Trump supporters, but he also has constituents who are government workers. He has constituents who are affected by all of these things. They don't want to have this conversation again.
So, meantime, thousands of federal employees will return to work Monday, and the government may be reopened. But what kind of challenges, Shawna, do these employees have to tackle now?
So it ranges from everything. I mean, the thing is, in a lot of cases, there's literally nothing that's been done. So getting back up to speed on contracting things you were working on. One of the stories that came out while the government shutdown was going on was about science and scientific experiments and things like that you were possibly losing time on with respect to actually trying to learn things that will make the country better. But mostly it is a process of playing catch up when you haven't actually been able to do your job for a long time. And in that playing of catch up, you are still losing productivity, right? And then on top of that, government shutdowns cost money. So they do have to go. They have to pay these people back, which is good, and we want that. But they have to go through the process of figuring out how much people are owed, how much overtime people are owed. And then the other thing is, people have sued. There are Bureau of Prisons workers who have had to work overtime in this. Other groups, other labor unions have sued over the fact that the government is shut down. They are still working out the lawsuit from 2013 over that shutdown where one pay period was missed. They have not finished working that out. Some of those same people are in another lawsuit. The federal government is going to have to deal with that lawsuit, and that is something that is going to keep going.
Yeah, so many effects emanating from this longest government shutdown. Let's turn to another topic. The president's longtime associate, Roger Stone, was indicted Thursday. He was charged with 7 counts brought by the special counsel. What sticks out to you about the alleged crimes?
So I think one of the things that sticks out is that there is no crime of collusion in that indictment. And I think that is worth noting, and I believe that the administration has noted that as well. I think the other thing that sticks out is that there are a couple of places where it points to people in the Trump campaign orbit having conversations with Roger Stone, whether that be via text or be via email, about the WikiLeaks dump and what does he know and could he get more information for them. And in multiple places in the indictment, they refer to it as Trump campaign officials. It is plural, right? So we know based on other reporting from other news organizations that one of those people having those conversations was Steve Bannon. What we don't know is when they say officials, do they mean one other person, two other people? Who else was Roger Stone talking to within the campaign? So while it doesn't necessarily point to collusion yet, it is one of those things of what were those conversations like? The other thing that's interesting is that there is a part of the indictment where the conversation is cut off because the person Roger Stone is talking to asks if Roger Stone has WhatsApp and can they continue the conversation on WhatsApp, which is an encrypted service for those of your viewers who don't know what it is, an encrypted text messaging service, basically. So what everyone is now curious about is how do you get the information from WhatsApp or how do you get the information from any other encrypted service that Roger Stone might have had? And so while everything that was, on a traditional email chain, Bob Mueller probably has, the things that were encrypted, you need the devices for. And the lawyers that I've talked to said, while the raid that was sort of the pre-dawn raid that CNN, kudos to them, got on tape, it was weird for Mueller to do it that way. What one of the lawyers said was, it's weird unless you're worried Roger Stone might try to hide something and you want to enact a search warrant, which apparently they did, and try to get his devices out of him and see who else he was talking to and what those encrypted conversations look like. But does this get us any closer to impeachment, indictment of someone big in the Trump campaign other than the Paul Manaforts of the world? I don't know, but it's also this is Bob Mueller's job. This is Bob Mueller's game, and we will, in some ways, still have to wait.
All right, to be continued. Shawna Thomas in Washington for us. Shawna, thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.